we all want to do something right now that can fix it for the rest of our lives, but the truth is that this is something that requires maintenance. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Strong Stoic Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Tumblin, and I got to tell you, I just got back from holidays. And no, not when you're listening to this. I'm actually recording this on January 9th, which I'm a little behind schedule because I've been kind of really busy with work, and then the Christmas holidays came up, so I was with my family, and that was awesome. So it's been a while since I've recorded, and I'm a little excited, to be honest. It's obviously, I really like doing this, and it's been a solid maybe 3.5 weeks since I've been able to sit down and talk into a mic. So it's cool. I'm excited. And I got, as part of this excitement, I suppose I have a really heavy topic for you. The title is called A Heavy Heart, so it's got to be pretty deep. So I'm going to start off the year right. There's this particular philosopher really influenced me when I was a kid. Actually, I shouldn't say a kid. I suppose I was in my early 20s, so really a kid by all accounts. And I probably mentioned him before, but I don't bring him up too often for no particular reason other than I've read his books long ago, and I haven't really been into his material lately. So it's something that's been sort of it hasn't been on the cutting edge of my research, let's say. And you've probably never really heard of him unless you're a CrossFitter or maybe a powerlifter, but it's a guy named Chris Moore, who is more commonly known as Barbell Buddha. That's his stage name, so to speak. And Barbell Buddha, he was essentially a meathead powerlifter, really big guy, really strong, squatted, I think, around 900 pounds or so, which is considerable, very, very strong. And then eventually he developed into a very philosophical and wise person, and he did a lot of writing. He did a lot of, he wrote like 3 books, and he compiled them in a book called Barbell Buddha. And he had a podcast as well, about 100 episodes, which was called Barbell Buddha, where he talked about a lot of those ideas as well. And he died tragically young at around 35 years old. So very, very sad. This was probably about 5 years ago or so. And I actually didn't find out about him until after he died. So that kind of sucked for me. But there's an idea in his books that he talks about quite a bit that I really wanted to talk about today. And it's a hard one to think and talk about because, surprise, you're on the Strong Stoic Podcast, and both strong people and stoic people don't shy away from adversity, and they don't shy away from difficult conversations. And that's what I'm trying to show you through this podcast. And it really gets down to something that I'm sure you've felt throughout your life, if not regularly throughout your life, and that's having a heavy heart. Right, being bogged down by life's tragedy, being bogged down by life's evil. And not only that, but, because those are sort of the big ticket items, right? The existential crisis, so to speak. But there's also like all those embarrassing moments that you've experienced throughout your life, and the shame about things that you may have said or done. These sort of things that just weigh down on you as you get older and as you mature. And so this is something I want to talk about today, sort of how you can deal with that and what it really is, I guess, fundamentally. But first, if you like the content, I do want to thank everyone that's supporting me on Patreon. If you do want to support me, hop on there. Just $5 a month would help me out so much. I've got so much on my plate this year. I have a lot planned, and I am looking to monetize a little bit so I can actually keep doing this, because it is actually quite expensive. So if you do want to check me out there, and there's some goodies on there as well, check out my Patreon. Also, check me out on Medium. I've been blogging on there. You can view all my articles for free actually on Medium, because I only do 2 a week, so they give you 2 a week free articles. But if you do actually want to get a subscription there, it's pretty cheap. It's like $4 a month if you get it on the yearly. You can read unlimited articles, and if you use it using my affiliate link, I'll get a bonus from there as well. So check out Medium. There's a lot of great stuff on there. Actually, I recently got a membership. Another quick announcement is Kai Whiting's and Leonidas Constantaco's Q&A. So and this was announced on the episode with Kai 140. But we are actually doing a live Q&A with Kai and with Leonidas. These are the authors of the Stoic book, Being Better, Stoicism for a World Worth Living In. All you need to do is send me a picture. You can do it through email. You can do it through Instagram or Twitter, wherever you connect with me. Send me a picture of you in the book, and basically you'll be invited to take part in this Q&A, which is going to be early February. So check that out. You can ask unlimited questions that you want to these really, really great Stoics and very, very knowledgeable people. So I'm really looking forward to that. One last quick little thing. I have an Instagram live on January 19th, so check that out. That's going to be 12 or 1300 Eastern time, around there. So check that out. That's going to be announced on Instagram. Moving on to the topic at hand. Let's talk about the cost of self-improvement. And I actually did an episode talking about this in depth. Episode 87, I Was an Ass. Interesting titles I have on my episodes, right? Sometimes I scroll back through some of my old episodes. I'm like, what the hell was that about? And I have to actually open up the notes and figure it out. But that's kind of that's how I try and design my titles. So what does that mean, right? But basically, the overall message in that episode was that, as you set out on your journey in life and you try and get better at something, you try and improve, you try and develop more skills, have more meaningful relationships, all these things, try and become more wise, I suppose is a good broad way of saying it. That essentially what ends up happening over time is that as you grow up, it gives you more opportunities to look back on the things that you've said and done and basically feel like crap about it, right? Like, for example, maybe you made a very inappropriate joke when you were a teenager at the Thanksgiving dinner table, something like that, and you didn't really understand it at the time. You're thinking to yourself, well, this is just a joke. Come on, everybody. But it tended to be maybe at the wrong time, or it was said wrong. And I'm all for comedy. I think comedy plays a very important role, but there are certain points where you need to be considerate of the atmosphere that you're in. And so maybe you made an inappropriate joke, and now because you're older and you've learned more and you've grown more and you've realized that how much pain that caused to the people at that table, it kind of disgusts you to think that you would have said that, right? You look back and think, oh my God, like I was such an ass, right? I was an ass, right? And so basically that's what happens. And, perhaps you're a little embarrassed about a particular skill. Here's another way you can think about it. I mean, for example, let's say that when you were in 12th or in 7th grade, let's say you learned to play the guitar, but you weren't very good, but you got up on stage and you played in front of a bunch of people and you made a bunch of mistakes. And now you're looking at the video on Facebook that, your grandmother shared to your wall, and you're looking at it saying, oh my God, I was so bad at the time. How did I get the confidence to go up there and play in front of all these people? Here I am, horrible. So it's a skill that you've developed, but when you look back, you're a little bit embarrassed about your skill level at that time. And I mean, for me personally, it's easy for me to look back on some of the previous episodes I've done, for example, and because I think I'm noticeably better now at podcasting. I can let's say I'm better at talking in a flowing way rather. I notice how not so good I was at the time. I've noticed improvement. So getting better essentially doesn't come for free. When you get better at something, it means that you are better now than you were before, but now you have to accept and deal with how terrible you were before. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe, and it is a good thing. You should be happy about that you've improved, but there's always going to be little embarrassing moments that sneak up that sort of make their way up from the past that you're going to maybe feel a little embarrassed about it from a skill or from something that you've said that was just inappropriate or something that you did that you didn't really realize at the time. Now, I'm not saying in no way that you should deal with that for the rest of your life, right? I would never make that case. You need to live in peace. But if you're feeling an emotion, though, such as shame or such as guilt about the past, it means that you haven't really extracted the lesson from it that you need to, or maybe that it isn't solidified in your mind. And so you need to, if you're getting an emotional response from it, not all the time. Like obviously, if you're embarrassed about something you did in 7th grade, you need to move on with your life. Take in obviously that you've learned the lesson from that, but generally speaking, if you're having an emotional response about something in the past, it means you haven't really dealt with it properly, or you haven't really learned what you need to learn from it. So those are two little small examples. But then there's a whole other category that gives you a heavy heart over time, and that's just flat out mistakes, right? So in addition to you just being a fool in life, and I've done an episode on being a fool very recently, there's another category: you making mistakes even though you know better, right? Perhaps you are lazy at work and your performance suffers, and you know that hard work is good and you know how to do the job, but you're just being lazy. You're just choosing not to do it because, you're leaning into comfort. It's just a flat out mistake, or not a mistake that you make. Maybe there's a better word for this, but basically when you do something, when you have bad intentions, maybe that's a better way of putting it. So you don't have good intentions. You're doing something because you have bad intentions. Perhaps, it's out of your control, like bad for lunch, and then you throw up on the table at the after lunch work meeting. Maybe that's something that's not out of your control that you might consider a quote quote mistake. But even though it's not your fault, you're still very ashamed about it. Like if you throw up in public, you're probably gonna be a little bit embarrassed about that, even though it probably has nothing to do with you per se, other than the fact that the vomit is coming out of your mouth. It's nothing you really did. Maybe you ate lunch and thinking to yourself, okay, this tuna salad is pretty old. Maybe I shouldn't eat that, and you choose to eat it anyway. Okay, fair enough. You made a dumb mistake. You're being a fool there. But the point is that there's mistakes you make where you're flat out just being negligent, like ignoring your duties at work, even though you know better. And then there's other mistakes where it's not really your fault, yet you're still ashamed about it, right? And then the third little category, third or fourth here, is the loss of innocence. As you grow up, you not only witness evil that human beings are capable of, and you absolutely need to witness those things. I talk about that quite frequently because, recognizing your own evil and the evil in the world is something that's very, very, very important for you to grow as an individual. But what's really difficult about that is that you're losing your innocence, right? So when you witness other people's evil, when you witness people that are being malicious towards you, that sucks. But what's probably worse than that is when you start to witness your own evil, when you start to realize your own inadequacies, and not in a way that, a poor skill, but really malicious intent. Like when you catch yourself doing something out of spite or bitterness or resentment or just I guess, broadly speaking, evil, that's something that's very hard to deal with. It's not easy. And that's, really what the loss of innocence is. It's recognizing that you are not so innocent after all, even though you think you might be. And so it's one thing to make a mistake, but when you are in tune with your own capacity for evil, that's a huge burden to live with, man. It's huge. It weighs down your heart, quite literally. Now, the fruits of that burden is that you can work around it and be good despite that evil, but it's still a burden nevertheless. It's still something that you have to contend with and wrestle with. So what happens over time? Well, over time, all of these things that I've mentioned, it makes your heart really, really heavy, right? It makes your heart really heavy. That's the name of the episode, A Heavy Heart. So there's you growing and becoming better than you were. There's mistakes and unfortunate circumstances such as throwing up in public. And then there's the capacity for evil, the loss of innocence, particularly in yourself. That's something that's very terrible and hard to contend with. So what do you do about that, right? There's this scene in the movie Green Mile. And if you have Green Mile, I should say. And it's based on this book by Stephen King. It's an older movie. It's with Tom Hanks, but it's just a wonderful, wonderful movie. I highly recommend it. But there's this guy, essentially the theme of the story is there's this guy that he can feel all the pain in the world. He sort of has this next level supernatural empathy and compassion. And he can actually put his name as John. So he's sort of like this God-like figure, right? This God-appointed person in the world that's doing all these wonderful things. And he gets wrongly accused, and he's on death row. He got accused for killing 2 innocent children when really he was just feeling their pain and he went to help. And then, he's caught just crying with the children in his arms because, obviously, that's not something that's easy to deal with. But, he's wrongly accused, he's in prison, he's on death row, and the captain of the prison finds out who he is, finds out he can do miracles, finds out that he's fundamentally like a really good person, he's of God, so to speak, and he tells him, this is the prison captain, he manages the prison, and he tells John, this prisoner, listen, like, if you want, I can let you walk right out that door, because, like, how am I going to face God and tell him that I killed one of his creations? How am I going to deal with that? Like, sort of this thing, I'm probably going to get put in prison for releasing a quote, quote, prisoner on earth, but what's going to happen to my soul? Sort of this idea. And John, the prisoner, basically tells him, just tell God that you did me a favor, right? And he has this really, really just deep, deep emotional monologue, which is basically, I'm going to read it here for you. I'm tired, boss. Tired of being on the road, lonely as a sparrow in the rain. I'm tired of never having a buddy to be with, to tell me where he's going to, coming from, or why. Mostly, I'm tired of people being ugly to each other. I'm tired of all the pain I feel and hear in the world every day. There's too much of it. It's like pieces of glass in my head all the time. So obviously that's a very emotional and deep monologue. And obviously when he's saying this, he's basically saying, listen, put me in the electric chair and kill me. I don't want to have to deal with this anymore. And that line always gets me, I'm tired of people being ugly to each other. That sort of weighs, that really does, it weighs you down. It's hard to deal with evil in the world, right? It's very hard to deal with. So life is tough, man. And, if you haven't felt this before, if you're really young and you haven't really felt that heavy-heartedness before, you're probably going to. It's sort of built into the foundations of life, It's strong. It's strong enough, really, to force many people into bitterness and resentment and poor character and vice. This is why it's so hard to maintain these, it's so hard to be virtuous, to maintain it, because life is really tough, man. There's a lot of things that can weigh your heart down. It's hard to truly be yourself in such a world. It's really hard to be virtuous. So what do you do? What do you do about that? And there's no simple answer. There's nothing you can do today that's going to fix that for the rest of your life. That's not how it works. It's something that takes daily practice. You need to keep that slate wiped clean. This is very, very hard to do. It's very hard for me personally. I'm assuming it's very hard for pretty much everyone. Every goddamn day of your life, you have to have this unwavering forgiveness, as my friend Josh from the Perennial Leader Project would say, an unwavering willingness to remove those bitter and spiteful thoughts. If you were to look at a day in your life, it's like you get up, you probably have a bit of a morning routine. I hope you do. And then, you think about something your spouse did yesterday to piss you off, a bit of bitterness and resentment, even though you've talked about it and, they've apologized and everything. It's like, nope, push it out of your head. Wipe that slate clean. You have to do that 20 times a day, every time you feel those bitterness, resentful thoughts creep up into your head. It's very, very hard to do. And again, it's not like we all want to do something right now that can fix it for the rest of our lives. But the truth is that this is something that requires maintenance. In your car, man, you just gotta do it regularly. It's like cleaning the counter in the kitchen. You have to do it regularly. You can't clean at the start of the year your counter and then, okay, I cleaned in advance. Now it's going to be clean for the rest of the year. There's going to be breadcrumbs and, spilt honey, and there's going to be all this crap on the counter, and you have to clean it every day to keep it clean. Every goddamn day. I'm going to end with the passage from Barbell Buddha, the guy I spoke about early in the episode, because he really put this beautifully, and when he died, this was one of the first passages I read of him. It's one of his, I think it ends off one of his books, or it's very near the end of one of his books, sort of like the conclusion, so to speak. And the whole mentality about having a heavy heart in life and how to, get over that and be yourself despite life. He puts this very beautifully. His words are just very beautiful and very simple. He didn't really use big, crazy words like a lot of philosophers do. He's sort of just, basic, simple ideas here. So I'm going to end with this passage. And I quote, "Your heart will only get heavier and heavier and harder to lift. The flow of life will go on. Of course it will. And you will be pulled in the current. You will want to go. You will know the calling, but your heart will remain anchored. It will stretch. It will ache. That'll never change. Please know that. At best, you will go totally numb. You'll just forget what you love. Don't ever let that happen. Heavy or light, pick it up. Hold it high for all to see. Drift along with the current of life. Remain present. Don't be driven by external expectations, ever. Just let the next thing you do also be the most important thing you could do. You are divine, so don't waste a fucking moment of your time. Let the pain accumulate with the drift, but keep it wiped clean. See the shiny, polished finish underneath, a clearer view of what matters most. See for yourself that there's really nothing to fear. The hurt can be bad, the resource scarce, the pain very real and very heavy, but you are not powerless. You can still act. you can still reach. You are still capable of picking your heart up and carrying it wherever you want, really. So what's stopping you? Thank you so much for listening. I hope it was a meaningful episode for you. Check me out on Instagram and Spotify. You can always leave me a rating, review anywhere you want. Reach out to me. I want to say again about the live Q&A that I have coming up with Kai Whiting and Leonidas Konstantakos. Buy the book, Being Better. Take a picture, send it to me. Prove to me basically that you bought the book, and we'll include you in the Q&A. That's all I got for today, guys. Thanks again so much. Cheers. Until next time.